This week's tutorial is more about building convincing maps and covers creating the entranceways to one of the many houses that'll make up this Half-Life Alyx themed neighborhood. Since I'm doing a lot of custom building, it's taken a lot longer than I expected to get this map ready to be populated with NPCs. I think it'll be worth it though, as once it's done I can reuse this neighborhood to bring to life some interesting NPC interactions, starting with a Halloween themed mini adventure that I'll share as a full custom map when it's ready. I apologize in advance as this video has a whole lot less post-processing elements, but I'm hoping it's valuable for anyone new to the workshop tools trying to find their way around creating environments. Please put on a good playlist in the background while you watch this. I couldn't think of a good enough free music set for this long of a video. If you like this content, subscriptions and likes are the best way to motivate me to make more. Comment with ideas for future tutorials and I'll do my best to integrate them. Just like when I do the outside of houses, when I do the inside of houses, I'm just gonna grab some pictures from Google and search for house interior entrance. So it's not gonna look exactly the same, but I'm gonna focus on trying to get the same general layout. So with the entranceway, the stairs, and the two portals on the side. So first thing we're gonna do is go into this empty house. I'm just gonna create the floor with the entity tool. So I'm just gonna stretch out a very flat entity, a nice flat square, and I'm gonna make sure I cover the entire floor, but not going through the walls. So I'm gonna go right up to the walls and actually go a little bit into the walls, but not through. And then I'm gonna make sure it's as low as I can get it. As soon as you see the grass coming through the texture, just move it up one notch so that you're sitting on top of the grass and it's not gonna show the texture through. Now I'm gonna grab material, I'm gonna grab some wood floor here, and it sort of matches the walls, but I'm gonna change the walls later. Now you can rotate the texture to get the direction you want. So in the reference picture, the direction of the floorboards is from the front to the back of the house. So I'm just gonna match that direction because maybe that's something that some designer decided is the right way for the floor to go. Now I'm gonna pull this out and actually just cut off the two sides because we have this weird outcrop for the doorway. Instead of trying to make two entities, I just decided to pull this one out and I'm gonna cut off the sides using the clipping tool. And I'm also just making sure that the floor isn't coming out through the walls, that it's actually just sit inside the walls. You got a bit of a buffer because of the wall thickness that you can just kind of stretch the floor and have it going a bit into the walls. I happen to notice that one of these faces wasn't set right, so I'm just gonna put the paint on the face and go around the house and I'm gonna make sure that all of the other faces, so here I'm using the face tool, not the object tool, to click on the individual faces and set their materials. When you use the face tool, that makes sure that it doesn't set the entire entity block to that material, just the face you clicked on. So here I'm going to just cut along the house because I want to get rid of those two pieces of floor that are jutting out. And you can use the blue part of the line to move your cut back and forth. And you can also use it to angle the cut as well. Now here I'm doing a straight cut so I don't have to play with the angle, but I can move it around and make sure that I'm getting just the right spots. In the keep mode, you can use the half keep mode to see exactly what your cut's gonna look like. And then afterwards, I'm gonna go back to the keep both just to make sure that I don't cut out the inside of the doorway that I need. So now that I've put a slice through the entity, I'm gonna do two more small slices on either side of the door just to get rid of those two pieces. And here I'm using the half keep mode so I can see the pieces, how they're gonna disappear. And when I click enter after that cut, they're just gonna disappear. And there you see I'm using that blue line just to angle the cut to make it straight. And once I'm satisfied, I cut it out and there we go. I have a floor completely done. Next, I'm gonna paint the walls. I'm gonna use the face selecting, not the object selecting. So up in the top there, you have vertices, edges, and faces. I'm gonna click faces, click on the face I wanna change, and then grab the material. And here I'm gonna use this hotel wall painted. It has a nice sort of texture to it that makes it look like it's a painted wall. I'm gonna set it all to white. Here at the front where I cut out the windows, it chopped up a whole bunch of individual faces, so I gotta select every single one of those faces. I could try and merge them all together, but here I'm just gonna select each one, add the texture to the faces, and that's gonna take a little bit of time because there's a whole bunch of small faces there that are the result of all the cuts I made to get rid of the windows in the door. Now to create the ceiling, I'm just gonna take a copy of the floor, paste it in, and then lift it up about the height that I think the ceiling should be. You can use your little man here, the player spawn, as a reference because that's about the height, probably about a 6-foot height. So I'm gonna drag him into the house and take a look to see if the ceiling is about the right height. It looks like it'd be about a 10-foot ceiling, which is kind of high, but it's okay. That kind of makes sense in a big house. You might have a nice high ceiling. The key here is just making it so that if a player walks into the room, they don't feel like things are too high or too out of proportion. So the ceiling like this, I think, is gonna be about a good height. And I'm just gonna grab that extra little piece in the doorway and put that up as well. And I'll have to change the texture on that and the ceiling using the same sort of white paint. It's also handy if you wanna know exactly how high something is, you can open up the object properties, go into the transform and look at the Z field, and that's the height, and you can match them to make sure that things line up properly. Next, I'm gonna go for a set of stairs, and there is a nice stair model from the hotel level. I'm just gonna grab that stair model and throw it in. It is a bit high, but I think I can work with that. I don't wanna have to cut the stair model, so I'm just gonna use the entire stair model and I'm gonna position it so that when I walk in through the door, it's just to the right of player, just like in the image here. Now I'm going to add the wall beside the stairs. In the reference image, there's a wall that goes up alongside the stairs, and there's also an opening on the side. So I'm just going to copy and paste the outside wall of the building, pull it in, and line it up exactly with the side of the stairs. Next, I'm going to grab a two-sided door frame. I don't intend for this door to ever open. I'm just going to put a door in there for looks, just so it kind of has that feel like you can imagine there's a room there, but I'm not going to fill that room in. I'm just going to add a door without a doorknob. So I'm going to put the frame in, position it about where it is in the reference image. So I'm keep on walking through the front door and taking a look to see what the player will see when they walk in. And I think that's a pretty good spot for it. Now, in order for the door to sit nicely in the frame, even if it's not going to open, I'm going to cut out the opening of the door using the cut tool. After you've used the cut tool a few times, it really starts to make sense, and you can really start to use those keep modes to see which parts of the doors you're cutting. Just make sure after you slice the two sides, you're reselecting the object in the middle and just cutting the top. And there you go, there's the doorway, and I can just grab any old door here. Typically I'll grab, instead of the one-side doors, the two-side doors. And doors actually have multiple skins, so here I'm going to pick a different skin than the default to make it look kind of like a beat up wood door. Now for the back wall. In reference image you can see that it looks like there's a room back behind the stairs. So I'm going to have that same effect. I'm going to copy and paste the back wall, bring it forward, line up with the stairs, and I have to kind of go on the outside of the house to see if it's coming through the sides, and I'll adjust it so that's about the right place, and there we have the back wall. You can see in the reference image there's sort of a doorway there, and also there's a left wall that comes in as well, which kind of is going to cover that window. So I'll copy and paste the outside wall again from the left side this time, and I'm just going to adjust it and move it in, and that's going to be used as that left wall. Next, I need a wall that goes up along the left side of the stairs. So I'm going to copy the wall I just made, move it over to the left side of the stairs, and then resize it so that it's just the width of the stairs. And I think in other videos, I've used the scaling tool to resize things. Here, I'm just going to use that top select tool, the little pointer, and that lets you pull in or out and resize entities without having to scale both sides at once. It's really handy. For the back opening, I'm just going to use this nice sort of rounded door frame, almost to look like an arch. I'm sticking with models that come default with workshop tools. And this model gives it kind of a nice little arch look, and I'll use the cutting tool again just to cut out an opening and make sure that the arch covers the entire opening. In the reference image, you can sort of see how it looks like when you come into the house. There's sort of a hallway in the back. So I'm going to add that same effect by just moving the wall back so it looks like there's more house back there. And I'm also going to make sure I add the frame to the other side as well. Now for some props, just to give the house a little bit of personality. I can't get the exact same sort of props that are in the reference image, so instead I'm going to take some kitchen cabinets to make a bit of a desk. And I'm just going to use the scaling manually to try and get a good size. So you can see I'm setting it from 1 to 1.5 to 2 and trying to get a decent size of the model without distorting it too much. If you resize one aspect too much, you might get distortion. Here the distortion isn't too bad, so I'm going to stick with that. Next, we'll grab a picture. Just like in the reference image, a picture above the desk. If you go into the properties of the picture, you can set what the image is going to be, and I'll show that later. Now we'll grab a lamp to put on the side of the desk, and we're going to populate the desk with some various items. And there's not a lot to choose from, but there is a few things. The jar was a bit too large, and without something in it, it didn't really make sense. So I decided to go with this smaller sort of jar here. This green, I guess, I don't know if it's a jam jar or something. And on the right-hand side, I just grabbed a stack of books. That's kind of a nice thing to put on a shelf. And I thought maybe in the reference image, looked like there was sort of the shell. I just picked a head crab shell. I'm gonna have to resize it to fit it within, the second shelf of this unit. And here's another little trick. The shell, when you put it in, it's sort of standing up. You can select the shell, hit the physics tool, do a physics simulation, the shell will settle using physics into a decent spot. So you can see here, it settles back and it looks kind of more natural that way. Now you can simply resize props. So I want a little statue here. So I'm going to take this massive statue and resize it right down to 0.1 size and then put it onto the desk. It doesn't quite fit where I want it to fit. So instead of putting it on that shelf beside the shell, I'm going to end up moving it up above and putting it on top of the dresser. Now I still have that open spot on the second shelf, so I'm just going to grab a regular book and toss on the shelf just to finish things off. Now for the left wall entrance. So when you walk into the house, you can sort of see to the left there's another room, and that could be like a family room or something, probably some furniture in there. So I'm going to grab the same opening I had to go into the back of the room, but I'm going to stretch it out and make it a little bit bigger. Because I'm only stretching it across one direction, it sort of distorts it, but I'm just gonna stick with it anyways. Maybe I'll end up changing it later if I wanna make it look nicer. Now I'm just gonna cut out the opening. This is a quick and easy cutout because you have lots of space within that frame to set your cuts up, and it's still gonna look nice right through. So like I say, it's not looking perfect, but it's looking pretty good. You kind of get a sense that there's stuff in the house. Now I'm gonna set up some stuff in the back room. The reference image has a whole lot going on back there. I'm just gonna put a table and chair so it kind of looks like there's a bit of a kitchenette somewhere in the back of the house. So when the player walks in, they just get to feel that there's stuff going on back there, even though I'm gonna ensure that when I actually publish the map, there's no actual way to get back there. I'm gonna block it. Now on the left-hand side, I'll just add a couch, a chair, and a TV. Give it a feel like it's a living room of some kind. And I'm also gonna wanna block that window. The windows on the inside, it's just kind of a big hole, so I can use these blinds, these curtains, to just put over top of the hole. And when the whole scene renders, they actually turn out pretty nicely. It blocks the window enough that it looks like there's curtains there. And you'll notice as I'm moving around, if I notice anything's out of place, like that door frame wasn't quite thick enough, I'll just change it then. And I'm gonna spend a lot of time going through this map and trying to figure out if there's anything that doesn't quite fit. And that takes a lot of time. So there's your TV, it's kind of an old school TV, and nice little coffee table. So now when you walk in, it's starting to look a little bit like a house. But now I'm going to do a cut along the rail diagonally. And you don't really need to do this, right? I mean, it doesn't look too bad if it's just a flat wall. But looking at the reference image, you see the railing kind of goes up, and I think it gives the house kind of a more open feel. So even though I know nothing about house design, I'm just kind of trying to base my ideas on what I see on Google. Someone designed the house and put that picture on Google, so they probably knew what they were doing. So I'm just gonna kind of mimic that. Now I've got to make the cutout for the second floor. So I've got to bring that ceiling back and figure out what's the right amount to bring it back to make it look natural so that when someone walks up the stairs, they're walking up onto the second floor. Instead of cutting out the whole thing, because I want to maintain the ceilings in the other two rooms on left and right, even if you don't go into the right room, I'm just going to use the cutting tool to make a few cuts and just cut out that square in the ceiling. So it's going to take 4 different cuts with the cutting tool. So now I'm going to take the player spawn in here, put him on the stairs, and just check that it makes sense. You don't want it to look weird, like he's going to hit his head on the ceiling or super, super high and it just seems out of proportion. And that looks about right. It's high enough above the player when they walk up the stairs that it seems to make sense. Now the second floor is an absolute mess because while I was doing the bottom floor, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on the second floor. So I'm going to do a whole lot of arranging of these entities, trying to line things up to try and figure out what's the best way to lay out enough of the second floor that when I see it from the bottom of the stairs, it sort of makes sense. So this is just a lot of playing around with the entities, pulling things, stretching things, cutting things, and moving things around until it looks about right. Now remember, Control Z is your friend when you're doing this kind of work. So here I made a mistake, and you see how everything turned red because something went wrong after my cuts. I just hit Control Z a few times, backed up, and then redid it. Really, the trick here is trying to make things look normal enough that your mind doesn't pick up on anything strange. Because as long as things look kind of normal, pretty much what like a regular house looks like, your brain doesn't even notice. It's just kind of a trait of ours, right? Your mind is really great at finding things that are weird or different or out of the ordinary. So I want to make this house look the least out of the ordinary I can. So I'm constantly drawing the player's attention to aspects of the story once I build a story, as opposed to, does the ceiling look too high? Does the second floor look, like it's in the wrong spot? And that sort of stuff. So it looks like I'm taking a lot of time to line up all these ceiling marks, but I just want to make sure that that doesn't distract the player, so they don't come into the house, see something weird on the ceiling, and think, that's just not right. Next, I'm going to build a railing so that when the player comes in, they see a railing across the top. Now, this is where I'm kind of diverging quite a bit from the reference image. I like the idea of having a railing across the top because it kind of looks like there's a landing space up there, so someone could, walk up to that railing and look down at the player as they walk into the door. There, that's looking pretty good. And now I can take all the individual pieces of that railing using select click. I can select all the bits at once, copy and paste it, and then I'm going to use that same railing on the right side. So from the bottom of the stairs, the player sees both the front and the right side of the railing. Now to simplify things, I'm just going to add a wall across the top and put a couple of doors in that wall so that the player feels like there's more things going on upstairs even though they can't quite see it. Now I'll just copy and paste an existing door from the bottom, put it at the top, and just line them up so that they sort of make sense. So now the player walks in, they see two doors at the top of the stairs, and they get that feel like there's a lot more to the house than there is. And now the top of that wall looks a little blank. I wouldn't expect if you walked into a house there'd be a big blank white wall. So I'm gonna put a large picture on there and change it to the forest picture. So you can see there's a drop down there so you can decide what image goes on the back. And it'll show you a preview of that image. So there's a nice big picture at the top of the stairs so it's not entirely blank. Finally, I've got a few bits and pieces to fix because when I cut out those doors, I accidentally cut all the way through the entry down to the bottom, and I want to have That wall in the back look like it's kind of an entryway to the left side there. And there's also a bit of weirdness going on with the stairs. I'm not too worried because I think once I have lights in there, you won't really see in behind the stairs. So I'm just gonna leave that for now, but I might fix it later. So now I'll add a couple light sources, and when you're adding light sources, I mean, just walk around houses and look at about where you see lights in your own house. So I'm gonna have a light just at the entranceway, which is gonna light that first room. I have a lamp on the table, and I'm gonna put another light in this living room area. I'm just gonna use point lights for this, and I'm gonna put the point lights almost directly inside where the light bulb should be for the lights. And that seems to work pretty well. I might adjust them later when I'm doing the finishing touches on the map. That's when I'm gonna go back and make all these fine little changes to the lighting and stuff to make it light just the way I want. But for now, I'm just gonna take some point lights, put them in the lamp and both the ceiling lights, and just use default settings. Remember to bake all your lighting before you compile this to at least get a good feel for what it's going to look like once the final build is done. Here I've baked all the lighting. The end product is going to be a lot darker than this. Right now I have my skybox set up quite lit so that when I'm running tests I can see everything that's going on. But you can imagine this is going to be quite a bit darker. And we'll head over to our house and open the door. And there we go. So as long as I keep the player inside the entranceway, it looks like a fairly done house. And all of these houses are gonna have their entranceways done pretty well, but not the rest of the houses. You can see there's no doorknob on this door. So if the player were to somehow get to that point, they can't go past. They could walk up the stairs, but I'm gonna make sure to block that off. But otherwise, it looks pretty good. If they were to walk into the living room or get to this spot, you can see the windows covered. Kind of makes sense. You have a seating area. There's a bit of wonkiness with the lighting that I have to fix. Some of the reflections look a bit weird. If you go into the back room, you're gonna see that it just doesn't make sense. So I gotta make sure I keep the player out of the back room, but I want them to be able to see into the back room and just see that table and chairs. Still a few problems here. I'll have to fix that. And in general, there are a lot of little bits and pieces I have to work on with this map, but here's a done entranceway, and in total that took me roughly 3 hours to finish. I mean, all this footage is all sped up and there's been a lot of editing, but that took quite some time to get just one entranceway done. So you can imagine I've got several other houses to do and I still have to put in the NPCs. So hopefully I'll get that done this week. So hopefully soon I can start doing tutorials on the behaviors of the NPCs that I'm gonna put into this map. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. I know sometimes it helps me to just kind of sit and watch other people build stuff to get ideas. I'd still like to get this map done for early October. I might not make October 1st, but I'll keep on making videos and updates as this progresses. So again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in VR.